Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stolaroid Stories. This is the podcast where I interview interesting people in general, where we can learn about something that we know nothing about, like, for example, Lithuania and anthropology. These are two topics, two subjects I knew nothing about until I had this conversation that you're about to listen to with Paulius. Now, Paulius, first of all, for me, it's very hard to pronounce this name, and you will realize as soon as the conversation starts why it's tricky for me. But Paulius is a lovely man from Lithuania. He's a teacher of Lithuanian, and he's also got a degree in anthropology. So I decided to invite him here on the podcast to talk about anthropology, something I have no idea what it is. I just know it's the study of human beings, and Lithuania, because what do I know about Lithuania? Well, now I know something, but before this conversation, I just knew that it was a little country near Russia. That's all I knew. And I also knew that it was part of the Soviet Union once. That's all I knew. So I hope you will enjoy this conversation. If you want to learn about anthropology and Lithuania as well, this is a good way to do it. It's an introduction, at least, to these two subjects. But Paulius knows many things. He's a very knowledgeable man. So it was great talking to him. Anyway, I hope you will enjoy this conversation. Get ready now. It's story time. Welcome, Paulius. Let's start again.
Yeah, that happens.
Paulius. All right. Correct?
No worries.
Is that
no
correct?
worries.
All right. Okay. Welcome, Paulius. Welcome to Stolaroid Stories. I'm glad to have you here. Welcome.
Hi, Fabio. It's good to be on your show. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I was on your show as well. We talked about language learning and my book. So today in this episode, we're going to talk about something maybe more interesting, at least interesting for me, because we're going to talk about anthropology, only serious things, and your country, your own native country, Lithuania. These are two things that I know nothing about. Really, I know nothing about anthropology, and you've got a degree in anthropology, and you're from Lithuania. Which one should we start with? What do you think? Do you have any preferences?
Well, I think we can start with anthropology, because that could maybe make the conversation about Lithuania a little bit more interesting, because we could talk about Lithuania from an anthropological background.
Wow.
So
okay.
You said it's gonna be serious. We're gonna speak about methodology. This is gonna be hardcore.
Right.
No, just kidding, of course.
Okay, so let's start with that. Anthropology. What is anthropology? I have a very vague idea of this science. If it's a science, I don't even know if it's a science or a discipline. I think it's the study of human culture, evolution.
Yeah, sort of. Like anthropology has a few main areas. So let's say there's cultural anthropology, as you have just said, or often called sociocultural anthropology, where anthropologists study different culture from their own perspective. There's physical anthropology, so that's more to do with evolution, let's say, and studying primates and maybe humans, but mainly it's more like watching primates. And there's linguistic anthropology, which is sort of like a combination of linguistics and anthropology to be with the people and see how their language works and how it evolves and why it is in the way that it is. And then there's a very commonly known archaeology, which is used to be all the same together with anthropology, but then it became like two separate disciplines where you or you research physical artifacts to know a little bit more about cultures of the past. So what I focused mostly was sociocultural anthropology. That was kind of my path in anthropology. But of course, linguistic anthropology is super interesting for me too, as a teacher, as a language learner. So yeah. And very broadly saying, I think anthropology is simply the study of human beings, study of people. So it started in the, I think, early 19th century or early 18th century.
Oh,
And the
recently.
history is a little bit dark. The history is a little bit dark because it actually started because colonial powers needed to understand their subjects. So let's say when people came to, I don't know, Africa, Australia, they noticed that the culture is different, and they noticed that the people are different, and they started thinking, well, they started reflecting on themselves. Well, if these are people, and this is super normal idea now, but in the 18th century, they were not sure, Europeans at least, are these people, right? As horrible as it sounds, that's history. And they started asking questions about themselves and their own origin, because this was also the time of Darwin's theory of evolution, a little bit later. So a century or a few centuries later. So they started reflecting of who are we, where did we come from, how did we come to be as we are. So then we got the development of ideas like primitive and advanced societies, right? So, okay, the people in, let's say, the Aborigines people in Australia must be the primitives. We might have been the primitives before, but now we evolved. And there was a lot of this kind of nonsense. But later, with time, people started looking at cultures and, let's say, people in what they call cultural relativism point of view, that all cultures are equal in a sense, and they function and work from their own standpoints. So for me, certain things might be unacceptable from my point of view, but from their point of view, it totally makes sense. And that's how it works. But of course, this brings a lot of problems due to the fact that, okay, in some cultures, it's okay to throw rocks at women or kill them if they look at another guy not the right way. I cannot say this from a cultural relativist view that that's how their culture works. There's a lot of moral and ethical issues as well. But anyways, just to say it broadly, that's the origin, because they wanted to Europeans wanted to understand themselves, who they are, and they wanted to understand the people that they met so they would know how to rule them better. But that was only the beginning. And now it's just like studying, you can study your own culture. You can study subcultures. So let's say, there's great studies about, let's say, punks or goths or hippies or, anything that you want. You can study homeless people, the lives that they have. Some people go and live with the homeless to understand, like, really from the inside out, how their daily life is, how they think, what they do, why they do these things. So it's just a way to research by using yourself as a tool.
Wow. You see, this is the first thing that I'm learning today. I didn't know that it started as a way to study Aborigines, like in Australia. And what did they do to study these people? So the British went to Australia. I lived there, so I know a little bit about the culture. But okay, they colonized Australia and they killed everyone, almost everyone.
True.
And how did they study these native people? Like, what did they do exactly to study? Do you know? Or
Yeah, of course. Like the father of, let's say, so we can even take, for example, the beginning of anthropology also as a method. It used to be called ethnography. And ethnography is now one of the methodologies of anthropology. And it literally, it doesn't mean, but it is just simply going to the people. So if you want to understand who the people are, you have to be with them. You have to live how they live. And you have to put yourself in their shoes. So if you're going to study hunter-gatherers, you have to live as a hunter-gatherer, right? You have to be fully immersed in their society. You have to speak their language or learn their language. You have to do the things that they do. You have to talk with them about those things. And you have to, so it's called emic etic perspective. There's one perspective, the emic one, which is basically the perspective of the people. So you have to get that perspective. And there's the etic perspective, which is the perspective of you as a researcher coming from outside. And at the end, you try to combine these two to make a research. So you try to get the direct personal experience of the culture, the people, or the object of your study. But also you remember that you're a scientist or anthropologist or whatever. So you have to kind of be fully immersed, but with a little bit of a distance, so you kind of still remain as a scientist. And many people actually end up living with the groups that they study. Like they go fully native and they never come back.
wow,
They study some tribe and they continue living with that tribe. They're like saying, that's what I want to keep on doing.
wow.
So it's
This
funny.
clearly this didn't happen to you.
No,
'Cause
I never did this hardcore because this is more like old anthropology, which was very important for the people when in the 19th, let's say, and early 20th century as well. It was very important, like because there were a lot of colonies, there were a lot of unexplored regions in the world. Some people still do it now, like maybe they go to the Amazon or some excluded locations, or even so to contact new people. But mostly now it has turned upon itself. So let's say there's like even business anthropology, where you go to various companies to study the culture of the company, and to help to be like a mediator between, let's say, different parts of the company. So your research object is the company itself, and you act as a researcher. So maybe the leaders of a company can make better decisions, how to be with the employees, how to be more efficient or whatever. So it can have many forms, and that's the bonus and also the minus. It's also a drawback, because once you graduate, you think like, well, I could go to academia and be an anthropologist in academia, but if I don't want to, how will I sell myself? you know? So that's a problem that many sociologists, anthropologists, more than sociologists, experience. But it's mainly to develop a theoretical background.
Okay. And why did you decide to study anthropology? So what drew you to this science?
Well, it's interesting. Like I'm always curious. I have always been curious about people and where they come from, who they are, why they are as they are. Why do some people think different from how I do? Why do some cultures behave differently than I do? Why are some conflicts arising? That sounds absolutely ridiculous to me, but it sounds absolutely real and important to them. There's a lot of this going on. And also it's just interesting, as if you have a particular interest. Let's say my bachelor thesis was on the nature-based spiritualities or nature-based religions in Lithuania.
Wow.
So as you might know, so this kind of will lead a little bit into Lithuania, because Lithuania used to be the last pagan state in Europe. Lithuania has been pagan until the late 14th century, while every other country has already been Christian. And there were a lot of crusades into Lithuania due to this fact. There was the Teutonic Knights, and there's a rich history that we could delve into. But in contemporary Lithuania, there's still this nostalgia towards nature. That's why we preserve nature. 1/3 of Lithuania is still forested. I'm sorry, one fifth of Lithuania is still forested, yet 1/3 is of meadowlands, so it's just grasslands and farms. We have many lakes, and Lithuanians really like to spend the time near lakes or walking in forests, and the connection of with nature is still there. And some groups, like the Romuva group, are trying to revive like the old pagan beliefs, and they still do the rituals, the fire rituals. Of course, it's a little bit funny from one point, because we have to understand that pagans, both Baltic and Slavic, sacrificed people to the deities. So let's say maybe in summer they would sacrifice them through fire, so burning people, or
Alive.
let's say, I don't know the details. maybe
Okay.
not. I have no idea. But also, like in the winter, or let's say in the cold time, they would sacrifice them to the water, so most likely drowning people. And I don't know if they actually wanted that to happen, but but it was just to please the deities,
Okay,
And
I
also,
wanted to have, I wanted to get some travel advice about Lithuania, but now I think I've changed my mind. No, I'm joking. Of course, I'm joking. No, sorry, I wanted to say, you said that you're very connected to culture, and there is this nostalgia. Okay, no, sorry, go on, because you were about to say something else, I think.
Well, I just wanted to say like about the attempts of reviving, like it's called neo-paganism, like, and it's also many neo-pagan beliefs are coming around in different parts of the world, but in our culture, they think it's a continuation of the old Baltic tradition, pre-Christianization. But are you going to continue the human sacrifices as well? If not, it's not really a continuation. It's a new religious movement instead of the old religious movements. And I feel like a lot of content has been lost, and it will never be revived, because most of it was spoken, and Lithuanian is actually one of the oldest language in the world, currently still existing to today, still spoken, due to the fact that it was spoken and only been written in the first millennia. So it hasn't been a written language for a long time. I think actually until the connection with Kievan Rus, with the Slavic people, and then taking the old Slavonic scripts, and then it got written down. So anyways, so this was my bachelor thesis, and I thought like I'll go and talk with Romuva people. There are some interesting other nature-based religion movements, and why do they live as they live? Because some people, let's say, buy land and go to live in secluded communities where everyone has, let's say, a house that at least 100 or 200 meters of land, and it's a settlement of like-minded people who live in a certain way, and they build their own communities under certain standards that other people don't have. So a natural question for me is like, why? And if you want to know why, the best thing to do is to go to them and talk with them. So that's what I did, and I think that's why anthropology is interesting. You get the chance like we're doing now, to have interesting conversations and learn something that you did not know and then present it as a piece of scientific literature.
Amazing. Yeah. I'm thinking, have you realized the first thing that I'm thinking now is, would the world be a better place if everyone studied a little bit of anthropology? Because if you put yourself in their shoes, I mean, I'm from Italy. I want to learn about Morocco. I go to Morocco, or I speak to someone from Morocco here in Italy, and I get to know them. I get to learn more about their culture. I think traveling in general, maybe traveling is a form of anthropological study.
Yeah. Yeah. I do agree.
Do you think the world would be a better place? Maybe racism wouldn't be a thing if we all learned about each other a bit more.
Sure. I think that could be absolutely true. And like, I could take a very simple example of a very big contemporary problem. It's the war in Ukraine. And like, and studying a little bit of anthropology and history would help to understand why, let's say, certain propaganda is wrong and just absolutely false. Because one of Putin's claims are that there's no such thing as Ukraine or Ukrainian nation. And it's funny because people in the 19th century from Russia, which were doing ethnography, wanted to understand their people, the people that they're under the empire. And that's the first time when they saw that people living in the lands of Ukraine are actually different from, let's say, living in the oblast of Vladivostok or like in the oblast of Moscow. So they saw that there's different songs, there's different culture, there's different behavior, there's different rituals, the language is also different. That shows that there's a different cultural group living there from the one where they came from. So in a way, Putin is also denying the study of his own people a century ago, which said, yeah, there's people that they're Slavic people, like we are Slavic people, but they're a different Slavic group. That's why Ukrainians, Belarusians, and Russians are coined as different Slavic groups, for example. So it could, knowing this stuff, like listening to, let's say, Putin speak about certain issues, you could already see that it's just political babble and nonsense. It's just to legitimize political agendas, but not to talk about factual reality, history, or ethnics, So that already kind of gives you a perspective of how to look at certain situations,
Do you think certain cultures cannot coexist? Like, I've heard Italian politicians say this. We cannot coexist. Like, Muslims and Christians cannot live together. But I've been to Singapore, and in Singapore there are areas where you find, London even, you've got Arabs, Christians, Muslims, Jews, all in the same city. No wars. So in a way, I'm thinking it is possible. But on the other hand, I wonder, is it really possible? Like, okay, Singapore it's a city. Okay, it's easy to do in a city. But how about in a whole country, in Italy, for example? I don't know. What do you think about this?
Well, it's a good question, but I think the main problem is not whether I'm a Christian, Muslim, or Hindu. It's whether I'm an extremist or not. Like, there are a lot of problem with Christian extremists, and there's a lot of problem with Islamic extremists. And there are even problems with Buddhist extremists. Like, if you know something about what's happening or have happened in Myanmar with the Rohingya crisis, because Rohingya is a minority group of Muslims in Myanmar. And Myanmar mainly is a Buddhist country, and there are some groups of Muslims living in the east near the border with Bangladesh. And one day, one of the fundamentalist leaders decided to actually call them. It was like Jewish genocide in Hitler's Germany,
times.
right?
Yeah.
So they just went and they started killing Muslims, and then 1 million people became refugees and had to seek shelter in, let's say, Bangladesh or other countries. And it was a slaughter. It was terrible. But we cannot say that all Buddhists are bad people.
Of course, yeah.
The extremists are, like, and I think that that's the main problem. And it's very hard to actually, it's very easy to say, okay, Christians are allowed, but Muslims are not. This is good, this is bad. This is yes, this is no. It's very easy to think in this way, and then it's easy to make political decisions. But to actually have a screening process and also maybe some kind of psychological test, I don't know, to see what are the beliefs of the person, to somehow understand whether he or she is a fundamentalist or extremist or not. I think that's the main question that should be addressed. How to do it? Unfortunately, I don't know, at least not yet. But I think that's the screening process that should happen. And I understand the fears of, let's say, people living in Europe. Horrible things can happen, and let's say I'm not saying bad things about Islam, because there's wonderful esoteric Islam beliefs like Sufism, for example. There's a difference between exoteric and esoteric religiosity. So esoteric is the teaching, like the real essence. Exoteric is the form. So some people just read the thing as it is, but still, even in the modern Quran, I cannot be 100% sure, but from researchers at least I read that it still said that it's okay to enslave people if they're not your religion's people, not from your religion. So let's say you cannot, and it used to be like that all the time. That's why Lithuania became Christian, because in the medieval Christianity, it was okay to enslave pagans, because they're pagans. You can enslave them, but you cannot enslave other Christians. So the Lithuanians and other countries were thinking, okay, we're going to become Christians, so we will not get enslaved. And
okay.
So it's also a political move. But like this thing, I don't think it's very common belief in modern Christians that it's okay to enslave Hindus and make them work on your farm or make them sexual slaves. But it seems that, let's say, Islam has not changed that much. But, people interpret religions differently. So the extremists will say, yeah, of course it's okay to, I don't know, kill and rape people if they're not of your own religion. But a moderate or liberal Muslim will say this is nonsense. No one should do that. This is So that's the problem, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's not a matter of being a Muslim or a Christian. I think it's just the individual brain. It's about how the individual brain works, because of course, we had also New Zealand. I don't know if you remember, or if you know about what happened in I can't remember the city. I think in Christchurch, I believe it was, that white extremists who killed 40 people in like 10 minutes live on Facebook.
Oh my!
2017.
I haven't heard about that. No, I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, he live streamed the whole thing with a GoPro. He went in and killed everyone, and that was the day when, the day after, I think, New Zealand banned all guns. Not like in the US. Okay, but we're okay.
Yeah, but that's a good point. That's a neighbor that you wouldn't want to have living next to you. And it's not because of his religious affiliations or ethnic or national affiliations. It's just because he's wrong in the head.
Exactly.
That's it.
You're just wrong in the head. Whether you're Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, if you think you're allowed to kill someone because it's different, well,
exactly.
You need to read a little bit, some books. Okay, but
and also you need counseling.
And counseling, yeah, of course, a psychiatrist or someone. So, but on the other hand, I'm thinking anthropologically. Now I can use this word because I've understood a little bit more about it. We used to live in tribes, and we still live in tribes in a way, but people who came from a different tribe was seen, I don't know, was it seen as a foreigner, so an enemy, by default? You don't belong, a threat to this group, so automatically we think we can't trust you. That is still very much how some people think, and some entire cultures as well. This is how we think. Again, still to this day. So, does racism come from our, tribal upbringing? Let's say it could be.
Absolutely.
What would you say?
I think it could. I think it could, because even when you study chimpanzees, like when different groups of chimps go roaming around the area that they call, well, they don't call, but they assume it's their territory. If they meet another chimp from another group, they will tear that chimp into pieces, like literally, physically, because he's not from their group and he's in their territory. So he will be ripped apart, not figuratively, but literally. So we do have a lot of that behavior still. But there are also bonobos who live for love, and that's what they do all day long. So there's different groups of primates. So which are we going to associate ourselves more with? That's the question.
Two things came to my mind as you're saying this. The first one is, I was 8 when I was in Sicily, and I was playing in the streets, and I saw 2 colonies of ants. And I don't know why, but I took one ant from one colony and I threw it into the other one, and they went crazy. They ate this ant alive. And then I did the opposite, and I saw the same thing. I thought, ooh. And then, of course,
that touches something
I
about
continued.
nature.
I continued after that. So, kids maybe sometimes are. And the second thing is the claim that many people make about vegans and carnivores. So they say, well, I'm a vegan. I don't want to convert anyone, of course. But
I have been vegan for 7 years as well. Like, I'm now a vegetarian, so we can connect on this one easily.
Okay, great. They say, well, but also the lion. The lion eats the antelope. So this is nature. But the lion also licks his balls. Do we need to do everything that the lions do? Well, we can decide. Well, it's not because the lion does those things, then okay, it's normal for us to do those things as well. Doesn't make it automatically a thing that we should do.
And
so yes,
a lion also kills his cubs. So that's why a lioness often tries to lead him away, and even use aggression against him. So the same with bears. But bears also eat honey and berries, so why not eat honey and berries?
Sometimes it's not I don't know, we shouldn't really mimic what animals do just because they're animals and nature, validates what they do. Because yes, we're animals, but we can be
Another
different.
breed. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're talking about Putin, Muslims, lions,
A lot of
licking,
stuff.
a lot of stuff.
Balls.
Okay. Lion lick. It's a very anthropological conversation, this one that
Very
we are having
scientific.
here. Yeah, very scientific. Okay, and let's see. I prepared some questions. Let's see if I. Okay,
Sure.
the main realization, like the biggest lesson that you've learned by studying anthropology, what is it? In like a lesson that maybe made you see the world in a different way. Have you got one?
Well, mainly, I guess that there's more complexity in things that I expected, because every kid in his early 20s, if he has a heart, he's gonna be a leftist, and he's going to think like, we don't need any borders, like everyone is inherently good, everyone should be the same, and everyone are the same, they act differently but they have the same essence, which is godly or whatever, and we should love all each other, and everything is actually good even if it looks bad. So that's like, if you have a heart, that's how you're gonna think in your early 20s. But later on, certain things kind of break this worldview. You see things, you hear things, you know things, and you realize that maybe not everyone is inherently good. Not putting labels on groups of people, but just on people as individuals. And this worldview starts to fall apart. And then you understand that not everything can be explained by politics or culture or religious differences or something. It does play a role, but there's something deeper than that. Why certain people do good things and why others do bad things. We can try to explain everything away through like socio-cultural, economic, political, explanations. It's because of class, it's because of, I don't know, being oppressed or what have you. But sometimes it's just deeper. Like you hear things about when two kids, 5 and 7, take a 3-year-old and mutilate him, like shoving batteries up his throat. That's not to do with the culture, I think, or politics, or it's just evil. It's something that some people have inside them, and you have no idea why and how. And I think this is like also where anthropology like reaches its limits. And then when you need cooperation with psychoanalysts, philosophers, not just also religious maybe figures, you to really understand why people are as they are. I understood that there's limitation to cultural studies. It's just one layer, and like religion, politics, economics, these are layers, but there's something that we cannot really measure that easily, as I would like to have thought that is possible to do.
I was thinking about a TED talk that I watched a few years ago. When you said it's something evil that these people have inside, it's not about culture or religious beliefs. In this TED talk, it was a brain scientist who was talking, and he understood, like he discovered that many serial killers or evil people had something in their brain, like a tumor or brain cancer in their brains. And he said, if we looked more at brain scans, we would be able to avoid these things, because it's not about something evil necessarily, like something that a demon that lives inside you, but it's a disease. It's something in your brain that, like, scientifically, there's something there that is messing up with your psyche, and you end up killing people.
Right.
I can't remember. Well, I'll try to find it. It was fascinating. I thought, wow, you see, we think that people are evil. That some people are just like this. They were born like this, and they're meant to be like this for the rest of their lives. We should kill them. Death penalty, for example. Well, maybe no. Maybe not. It's not. It's not how it works. But of course, I'm not a brain scientist, so I'm just reporting what I saw. Okay, you said, yeah. No, did you want to say something?
I don't remember the figures, but I think like I would have to check, but I think like 1 out of 100 people you meet is a psychopath or a sociopath at least. So people who doesn't have any empathy to you as a human being, and maybe he doesn't have any good wishes to other people either. So that would be a lot of people to kill if we if the general, I don't know, global population decided to do that. It would be very messy, and most probably we would get the wrong people, and the psychopaths would end up doing the killing.
Yeah.
It's never as you want, never as you expect. And if we would have these kind of thoughts, like literally, I think we would be in that group. So
yeah. Let's go back to your country, Lithuania. If I came to Lithuania for 3 days, okay, because Lithuania is a country. Now I know more about it because of this conversation, but I knew nothing about it before. And I feel that there are certain countries that are very rich in history, and there's so much to see and learn there that but they're not, they're underestimated. When I went to Bulgaria, for example, no one in Italy talks about Bulgaria. Like we know generally. I mean, I didn't know anything about Bulgaria, but when I went there, then I saw, wow, the Romans were here, the Ottomans were here. They invented the Cyrillic, the script. They found, I think, the biggest piece of gold. It's in a museum. Anyway, there is a lot to learn, but yet, where do people go on holiday? Spain, to the beach, for example. Or, there are certain, what I'm trying to say is there are certain countries that are underestimated, and I feel, at least I'm talking as an Italian, that Lithuania, I've never met anyone who said, wow, I went to Lithuania, it was amazing. Probably because we don't know about your country. So if I came to Lithuania for 3 days, where would you take me?
Okay. Well, I think I would take you a couple locations which you might not expect. Of course, spending 1 day in the capital would be fun. I think it's mandatory. Like that's important. But when you go to London, it doesn't mean you have experienced England, right? And definitely you haven't experienced the United Kingdom. So spending 1 day in London, you cannot say you have been to the UK. You have been to London. There's a difference. And I think it's the same if you would only go and spend 3 days in Vilnius. You would get a feeling, but it's a capital, it's a multicultural background. But I would definitely take you to Druskininkai. Druskininkai is a resort town in the southeast of Lithuania. It's only 20 kilometers from the Belarusian border, but the town is basically a spa town now, and it's just in the most beautiful forested locations in Lithuania. Like there's a lot of lakes. It's super calm, super fresh, super beautiful, and it's just like extremely peaceful. So I think Lithuania is not great for people who want to be like super stimulated by everything that they see, like colors and lights and sounds and like spectacle. It's more for people who want to rest, be more still, reconnect with themselves, maybe reflect. It's a good place to do that. So I think like visiting Druskininkai would also be great, and of course going to the Baltic Sea. And there's a little patch of land called the Curonian Spit, which I always thought was called Curonian Split because it would make more sense, because it's split from mainland Lithuania, but it's called Curonian Spit. I have no idea why English decided to call it like that. Anyways, it's like a very narrow, thin piece of land between the lagoon and the Baltic Sea, and I think the whole spit is around 100 kilometers long, but part of it belongs to Kaliningrad, so it's a Russian oblast, and another part of it belongs to Lithuania. So it's basically it's a place which is a natural reserve. It's a preserved. It's a UNESCO location as well. So it's a very lovely place, and it's one of the rare places where we have dunes in Europe. So we actually have sand dunes there, due to the geological formations and winds and so on. So it's a very unique place, and it's where I guess these are the places where I like to spend most of my time. So if I'm outside of the city, so either I go to Druskininkai, or I go to Juodkrantė or Nida in the Curonian Spits, or like spending some time in Vilnius. And there's a small historical city called Trakai. It's 20 kilometers away from Vilnius. You can take a train and go there by train. I used to live there for 2 years. It's really cool. You can spend half a day there and then go back to Vilnius. So yeah, that would be kind of my recommendations, I guess.
Thank you. It sounds lovely for someone who. It sounds like a great place for writers. You go there. Yeah. Like a great place for a writing retreat. Because you're a writer too.
So, yeah, that's true. And I think Jean-Paul Sartre, the French writer, French existentialist, like a friend of Camus, Albert Camus.
No, doesn't ring a bell.
So there's a French existentialist philosopher born from 1905 to 1980. He's one of the leading figures of existentialism. It's a part of philosophy, and we have in Nida his statue where he's leaning forward and the wind is blowing his suit. It's because there's a picture of him there going through the sand dunes with his wife, and he used to really enjoy spending time there to reflect and to think. So definitely a great location for writers. I would agree.
Wow. Okay. Is summer a good place to go to Lithuania?
Summer is the only good time to go to Lithuania.
Okay, because it gets too cold, I guess.
It gets really chilly, yeah.
There is a book that I read a couple of years ago about Japan called A Geek in Japan, and it was written by a Spanish or a Mexican guy, or Spanish, I can't remember. And it tells the story. So it presents the Japanese culture, but from a Western perspective, like not from a Japanese perspective, but from as an outsider. Okay, is there a similar book, you think, or a book that you would recommend reading about Lithuania, where it presents the country, the
Yeah,
culture, not just a guidebook, but someone who lived there, or someone a book written by a what's the adjective for Lithuanians? By a Lithuanian.
Lithuanian. Yeah.
Okay. Is there one that you would recommend?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Recently, I have listened to Timothy Snyder's audiobook, and Timothy Snyder is a historian working in Yale University, and his field is Eastern Europe, Northeastern Europe. So he's fluent in Ukrainian, in Polish, Russian. He can speak all the languages, and he has written a very good book, which is called Reconstruction of Nations.
Mm-hmm.
Poland, Lithuania, Ukraine, and Belarus, 1569 to 1999. So basically, he speaks about the region from a very interesting point of view, because I know that he doesn't have biases. So not like, because, and he also makes a very good distinction between what is history and what are national myths. So, every nation have their own myths. Like, we came out from purity, someone came and, did something, we were pure, then we got contaminated, then now we want to be great again, and, all that stuff. So mainly these are like based on national myths, national stories. History is not the same. And some countries teach history as national myths. And, you don't know, as when you're learning from your own, let's say, historians, are they teaching you objective facts, or they're teaching you what, let's say, political governmental figures want you to think about certain things. So it was very
Same with the
interesting.
news. Yeah, same
Yeah,
with the news.
absolutely. So I think it's a great book. It speaks about the good things, and he speaks about the bad things. So, it's not very popular to speak about the bad things that your country has done. In some places, yeah, it's okay. Like, let's say Europeans, Americans, they have a change in how they see history now. Maybe they speak about South and North American history, like pre-conquista, all that stuff in another way. But still, it's like you're biased to say good things about yourself instead of saying the bad things. So I think he gives a very good objective viewpoint of the region, and he really helps you to understand how it developed and why it is like that, how it is, like what external forces were pushing, let's say, Lithuania to consolidate. Because it would be cool to imagine that, I don't know, 10 local lords sat down and they said, we need to form a country. Let's call it Lithuania. It wasn't actually like that. It was like more like the Teutonic Knights pushing from the east, and maybe the Mongols coming and trying to take the Slavic lands. The Teutonic Knights pushing from the west and the Mongols coming from the east. There's external pressure. People saw what happened in Kievan Rus. They thought, like, we don't want to happen that there. Let's create a collaboration. Then there were a lot of fights. There were a lot of killings. And then one guy decided that killings are enough, and he is now legitimately king. Like, that's how history works, But you don't, it's most of the times not how you're being taught history. So I think it's a really cool book. And Timothy Snyder, as a historian, as a speaker, is great. He's amazing. He has a full free lecture series on YouTube from Yale University. So it was a course on Ukrainian history, and he recorded the whole course and put it online for free after the start of the war. And you cannot speak about one country without speaking about the whole region, because you cannot isolate and just speak about the country. You have to speak about what's happening around. So he spoke a lot about Muscovy. He spoke a lot about the Tatars, a lot about Mongols, Lithuanians, Poles, the Teutonic Knights, everything what was happening in the region to show why it is as it is today. So I think that's my number one recommendation. Just checking anything of his work. But if you really want a little bit to learn more about Lithuania, I think that book, Reconstruction of Nations, it's a good book to start, most likely.
Thank you.
Or the YouTube lecture series are the best. I started from there, I think.
Okay. And I play a video game called Age of Empires.
Oh man, I
you
love
too?
it. Yeah, I still play it.
Me too. Okay. All right. Finally, I meet someone who plays this video game.
I play Age of Empires 2 and 4.
I play Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. Do you play online, like what's it called, ranked games?
Unfortunately, I'm still trying to get the skills that I had as a kid. I think I have lost some of them, so I play single player skirmishes nowadays. Just to like.
Okay. No, we must do it.
I'm getting there.
We must meet and play together, because I was thinking about all these civilizations that you talked about. The Poles, the Lithuanians,
Tatars, the Khmers,
and they're all in that video game. So you build your empire. Okay, interesting. we have to talk. Okay, and you're also a teacher of Lithuanian, and I think if I wanted to learn Lithuanian, I wouldn't want to have a teacher who doesn't know the history. I think you would be the perfect teacher of the language, because you are so knowledgeable about the culture, about the history. You studied anthropology. So I don't know anyone, unfortunately, who wants to learn Lithuanian. But if someone wanted to, and someone who's listening to us now, where can they find you? So where can they find your lessons, your services, your courses?
Well, I do teach on italki, but I also have a website, and my website is www.mynameandmysurname.com. So and there's a little button there to book a lesson if anyone would be interested. It would bring them to my calendar, and they could check the available times, and they could book a lesson. They can range from 30 minutes to 60 minutes. It depends, like everyone has their preferences. And the reasons why people study is very different. Like I did have an Italian student. I had a Spanish, I have a Portuguese student. Most of the times, because they have significant others from Lithuania. So, and I have students who, let's say, have been born abroad, but their grandparents, let's say, live in Lithuania. And many people are now coming from Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, although it's a little bit harder for the Russians. So to live in Lithuania and to relocate and to work. So I do have a few, opposition, not leaders, but oppositional writers from Russia. They're more like media people who live outside, and they seek political shelter. So they're learning. Other people relocated from, let's say, Belarus, because they're a little bit afraid of what's happening in their country as well. So, and there are some, I have a dude from Romania now. We have had a few lessons, and he relocated to work in a Lithuanian company. I think it's an international company, but Vilnius have been quite attracting foreigners quite a lot nowadays for the past few years. So it's mainly that's why people learn Lithuanian. I think there might be like very hardcore language guys and girls who are just like out of curiosity But you have to have, as you have to have a very strong motivation to learn a language. If you're only curious, maybe it's not going to work, because it's a language that it's very hard to get into, especially if you're not, let's say, a Slavic speaker, because Baltic group and Slavic group are two different language groups. So let's say one of the most offensive things you can say to a Lithuanian is like, you guys speak Russian, don't you? It's like, no. Okay. It's like coming to Italian and saying, you guys speak Spanish, right? Or you guys speak French.
No. Okay, but I did have that
impression.
No idea. Yeah, impression, because it's close to Russia, so they must be Russian speakers. No, of course not. Okay. I'm glad I didn't say it, but I did think it.
Most people do. And it's just because, it's not a super hip and popular region to study. Like most of the people don't know much about Northeastern Europe's history. So they assume because it used to be part of the Soviet Union.
But people have got you if they want to learn. So I'm sure you'll make it. You'll do your best to make it easier for them. Paulius, thank you. It's been really it's a learning experience for me, because I didn't know anything, as I said, about Lithuania, the Lithuanian culture, anthropology. Now I can say, yeah, I know something about anthropology. Certainly more than
a regular person.
No, well, I don't know, but I know something more now, and I think there must be some sort of anthropology for beginners, something like this. Okay,
yeah.
Like a book. I'm thinking about a book.
Anyways,
thank you.
Thanks.
It's been a great chat. Thank you, Paulius. I'll see you in the next one. Maybe we'll see in the future.
Hopefully. Thanks for having me.
All right, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Paulius. I learned something new. I hope you did too. And if this YouTube channel or podcast brings you value, consider subscribing. In the future, I'm going to have some big names. Some big names on the show. I can't wait. All right, that's all that's all I can say now, because I don't want to say too much. Otherwise, it won't happen. So there's going to be someone very popular on this podcast. Yeah, and I'm excited. I didn't sleep last night because of this. Anyway, okay. I'll see you in the next episode. All right, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Paulius. I learned something new. I hope you did too. And if this YouTube channel or podcast brings you value, consider subscribing. In the future, I'm going to have some big names. Some big names on the show. I can't wait. All right, that's all that's all I can say now, because I don't want to say too much. Otherwise, it won't happen. So there's going to be someone very popular on this podcast. Yeah, and I'm excited. I didn't sleep last night because of this. Anyway, okay. I'll see you in the next episode.